Stewart.
Gentlelady's recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My colleague from North Carolina had the audacity to talk about bullies. Well, I think bullies showed up on January 6th and trampled all over the United States Constitution. I think bullies are trying to take away a woman's right to choose. I think bullies all over this country are involved in gerrymandering and trying to suppress the right to vote. So if you want to talk about bullies, let's talk about those things. You know, it has been very interesting listening to this discussion. As a former police chief, a former crisis negotiator, the commander of the critical incident management team, I hardly know how to describe or begin to understand why people who have the power and the opportunity to do good, to make a difference, just simply refuse to do so, come hell or high water. And Lord knows we have seen hell come over and over again, whether it was Columbine, Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, Las Vegas, El Paso, all our churches, Mother Emanuel, Sutherland Springs, and our movie theaters, our synagogues, grocery stores, the Pulse nightclub that just happens to be in my district, Parkland, Uvalde. And as my colleague said, before we can even get this hearing started today, a hospital in Oklahoma. Now, we all know that law enforcement is expected to do something to respond quickly and enforce the laws. Well, guess what? We as members of Congress are responsible for writing those laws, and we have watched hell come time and time again, over and over again, and simply have failed the American people. Well, I don't know about my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, but I am certainly not proud of that. Mr. Chairman, is there anyone really on this committee? Because sometimes it's hard to tell, is there really one who really believes that it's okay for an 18-year-old to purchase an assault weapon or an assault style weapon that can do unimaginable damage to the human body and also be able to purchase thousands of rounds of ammunition? Is there anyone on this committee who really believes that that is okay? The Ammunition Background Check Act, known as Jamie's Law, which my colleague, Mr. Dortch, just mentioned. Jamie was a young woman with her whole future ahead of us who lost her life at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Mr. Chairman, I ask my colleagues to not wait another day. And let's just sit back and see who's going to be killed next, who's going to die next in a mass shooting. Just as we expect law enforcement to do something, well, with our power comes responsibility too. The American people are expecting us to do something. Let's don't sit back and wait for the next child in this country to die in their classroom. Mr. Chairman, I believe that there is no country with a greater ability to protect our children than the United States. And there's been several people talking about Florida, talking about Parkland and laws that Florida passed. Well, let me be clear about this. It was the Republican-led legislation who thought that children dying at Parkland was ridiculous and shameful and appalling. And it was that legislation that raised the age, that legislation that imposed a 3-day waiting period, and that legislation or legislators that passed red flag laws. Somehow, through all of the politics that we see played today, they remembered, as we talk about constitutional rights, they remembered the rights of our children not to die by gunfire in the classroom. But you know what? They don't spend all of their time in the classroom. They go to church, they go to the balls, they go to the movie theater, we will be held accountable for acts of omission and commission. May heaven help us. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose is Mr. Buck's recognition?